Hey folks, we got day 6 of Admin Code. Unfortunately, I forgot to hit start recording before the problem started, which is too bad. It was a nice day for me. I actually got points on both parts. So I guess I'm just going to recap what I did, because I can't, I already solved it. I can't really record me solving it again. Sorry about that. So what was going on here? So we're given this grid with a guy moving around, and for part one, we just need to like trace out his path, right? So he starts going up, and then he goes right, and then he goes down. Once he hits something, he turns 90 degrees. And so, in this example, we like trace out his path. He hits all these squares marked with X, and we want to know how many squares like that there are. So pretty straightforward. We can just simulate it. For part two, we want to know we get to place down a new obstacle, right, a new hash mark, and we want to know how many places we can place a hash mark that traps him in a loop, so he never ends up leaving the board. Um, and so that one I chose to also just brute force. So you can see that I'm just trying all possible positions for an obstacle, and again doing the simulation. Um, Maybe I'll walk through this code a little bit more carefully since you didn't see me write it. Uh, so we get our file, we read it in, it's a grid, so we want to split by lines, we want the number of rows, we want the number of columns, we can loop through the grid to find the starting position of the guy. And then we had the simulation code. So he starts at the starting position, he starts going up, right? So just keeping track of the direction as just a number, 0, 1, 2, 3. Um, and then on his turn, he figures out what direction to step in. So this is, like up one row is up, right one column is right, down one row is down, and left one column is left. So step in that direction. If you're off the grid, then you're done with part one and you don't score any points in part two. And if you hit a wall, then turn right, and otherwise go in that direction. Um, so this is, I guess, slightly confusing because I've combined parts one and two here. But for part one, we need to keep track of which squares we've been on. So just keep track of that. And if we were trying to place an obstacle on a place where we already had an obstacle, then we're just simulating the original grid. And we can just say part one is how many squares we visited. And then in part two, we keep track of which square we're on and also what direction we're facing, because you could visit the same square twice, but in a different direction. It might not be a loop yet. And if we do visit the same square with the same direction, then we know that we're in a loop. So we can say, okay, that position scores a point for part two, and we're done. We don't want to keep following this loop forever. Right, so there's two ways to finish. Either you get in a loop or you go off the board. You have to hit one of those, fairly fast. And that's it really. So that's both parts one and two. And this takes like 40 seconds to run, which is kind of slow. I wonder if there's a clever sort of faster thing to do for part two, but I'm glad I did it this way, even though it was annoying that it took 40 seconds to run, because I'm, absolutely positive that this works and it is pretty simple to code up. And some clever thing, I don't know, maybe at like every position where you turn, you try and figure out if there would be helpful to have an obstacle there. It just could be wrong, right? It's very helpful to have like a thing that you know is right. Um, yeah, so on this problem, I solved part one in 2 minutes, which got me rank 80, and part two in 4 minutes 40 seconds, which got me rank 29. So nice to finally score some points on a day. And that's it for today. See you tomorrow.